All right, it's episode 12 of the JP Pod. I want to start this podcast with another Middle East update. We are now almost a week removed from Iran's unprecedented attack on Israel, the first attack ever directly from Iran on Israel. Israel has yet to retaliate and is facing immense international pressure to not strike back over fears of starting a regional war. The hypocrisy in that statement for not allowing Israel to respond, yet not condemning Iran for hitting Israel in the first place. It's almost like Iran is starting the threat of a regional war by striking Israel unprovoked, really. I mean, you could say, and Iran is saying this, but you could say that it's true or fair for Iran to strike back after the death of their general in Damascus from an Israeli airstrike. Yeah, that may be true if that general wasn't a key part of orchestrating October 7th. So that was Israel defending itself from somebody who has shown that they're a threat to Israel and their safety by orchestrating, such an attack like October 7th. Israel cannot let him continue to be alive, period. If they had a chance to take him out, they were smart to do so. So really, it was unprovoked because that was Israel had a right to do that, defending itself against someone who helped launch an attack against its own people and taking people hostage, raping women, killing babies. October 7th, the worst attack in Israeli history. Yeah, they had a right to do that. So this was an unprovoked attack from Iran on Israel. Reports are that the U.S. and Israel have come to an agreement to allow a major operation into Rafah while not having a retaliatory strike to Iran. Not sure how true that is, but that report did come out today. That is crazy. Why does Israel have to get permission from the United States for its military objectives? It's so crazy for the United States to be like, all right, we'll let you go into Rafah if you just don't promise to, attack Iran. Going into Rafah is a necessary military operation for Israel to defeat Hamas. This is not like a negotiable thing. Israel has to do this. That is the final checkpoint to get rid of Hamas. This is not this is not something to negotiate, especially with an ally of yours you claim for them to be. I don't understand. If you claim for Israel to be an ally, you support them. And these are not crazy things that Israel is wanting to do. They're not wanting to, conduct unprovoked bombing runs in Iran. Like these aren't irrational things that Israel wants to do. This is a military objective that Israel has to do. The last one, may I add, to defeat Hamas, to go into Rafah. And obviously whatever's left of Hamas has fled to Rafah and has established a stronghold there. So really, you get rid of Rafah and Hamas is pretty much all but finished. Why are you gonna pull back the reins now? The answer is political reasons, and Biden's losing the young anti-Semitic vote. We all know this with the protests everywhere he goes, it seems now. There's, ceasefire protests calling for the end of genocide, claiming that Biden is complicit in genocide. So Israel is going to do all the work to get rid of Hamas and get rid of that threat on its border, and then they get to the last objective to finish the job, and you're not going to let them. And then when Iran launches an attack, it's like, okay, fine, we'll let you, but don't strike back to Iran. Like, holy weakness. The United States, this Biden administration is just, they are reeking of weakness. And everybody, all of our enemies smell it globally. If the United States is not going to do its job to destabilize Iran, but yet they're not going to allow Israel to do what they need to do to defend itself from Iran, that's extremely hypocritical, dangerous for your own ally. It's like, I'm not going to do what I need to do to destabilize your enemy. And you may say, oh, well, why is it our responsibility to destabilize Iran? Because they're an enemy of ours too. They're in their own parliament hearings and sessions. They say death to Israel and then death to the United States. They call the United States the big Satan and Israel the little Satan. So this is not like we're doing Israel's job for them. No, this is an enemy of ours as well. They just happen to be in the region of Israel and are an enemy of them too. So this is not us, doing Israel's work for them. Iran is our enemy as well. So if we're not going to do our job, to destabilize Iran for not only Israel's safety, but for ours. And then when Israel gets hurt by this, I mean, they did on October 7th, but that wasn't Iran directly. When Iran directly strikes Israel as a cause of us not able to destabilize Iran and showing weakness to Iran and scared of them and enabling them to where they're able to launch attacks like that. But then we're going to tell Israel that they can't respond. The weakness, we're just transferring our weakness to Israel. And all that does is enable Iran more, because now that they see that, Israel's not going to do anything to deter Iran, they're just going to keep launching more attacks. We're sending Iran the wrong message, and we've been doing it ever since Biden came into office, truthfully. I could name several occasions of us giving Iran the wrong message and enabling them. But the amount of sanctions that the Biden administration lifted from Iran that Trump had in place that was working and let Iran grow tremendously, almost $2 billion of growth for Iran since Biden came into office. Trump had Iran on its last leg and, barely getting by. And Biden comes in and tries to appease Iran. And it's not just Biden. Obama had this same foreign policy, showing weakness to Iran, thinking that appeasing them and giving them what they want will, get peace in the region. It's the same. It's like a parent with a kid that's whining because they want ice cream or something, and you think that they'll shut up if you just give them ice cream. That enables the kid to, now if I just cry and whine, I can get what I want. Instead of disciplining them and saying no and being strong with them, that's exactly how we're treating Iran. It's like we think if we just give Iran what they want, then they'll stop being mean and, instead of showing them strength in the first place, it's like Iran, we're treating Iran like a global superpower. They're not. And we had them pretty much on their last leg when Trump was in office financially to where they couldn't do stuff like this. And they were scared of us. And I've set examples of this, contrasting examples from when Trump was in office versus when Biden was in office in past episodes. But like when we killed Soleimani, and rightfully so, and then they launched like a for show attack for its own people, launched 6 missiles that were not intended to hit at all. Like that's Iran being scared of us, and that's us showing strength to Iran. And if you don't show strength to Iran, people get hurt and our allies get hurt. Millions of people in the Middle East are in danger when Iran is enabled and not destabilized. So that's, Biden's own weakness gets people hurt. And that's what we're seeing right now. Biden's own weakness and his fear of Iran, and not just Biden, the Biden administration. We know that they're the real ones making these decisions and making these moves. But that's what happens. When you enable a terror state like Iran and let them grow like the Biden administration has, attacks like this happen. And what's our response? We want Israel to be weak in response. Israel, just don't start a regional war, please. How about Iran not start a regional war? The genie's out of the bottle here. Iran has launched an attack. They have to be deterred. There has to be a precedent set. And right now, the United States is begging Israel not to set that precedent because we're terrified of Iran. The weakness being shown to them from Israel not responding will not deter, but will enable Iran to launch even more attacks like this. This was not only unprecedented in the sense of, Iran, this is the first time Iran has directly launched an attack on Israel, not via its proxies. So not only that is it unprecedented in that way, but it was unprecedented, and there was hundreds of drones and missiles. Iran shouldn't even have the ability to launch an attack like that. But thanks to Biden's weakness towards them and letting them grow economically, they can build up their military weapons to where they can launch attacks like that. Now, 99% of them were shot down, thank God, thanks to, Israel's defense systems, along with Saudi Arabia and the United States and Jordan shooting down these weapons, these missiles that were shot at Israel. But the point is, that shows Iran is growing militarily, that they can launch attacks like that, and that they're not scared of the West anymore. That's very clear. Iran does not fear us. We fear them. The United States fears Iran. So weakness, I said this before on here, weakness gets people hurt, and weak men create hard times, and that's what we're seeing. The Biden administration is incredibly weak towards Iran, but not only Iran, pretty much everybody around the world, and their foreign policy is give them what they want, and hopefully they'll shut up and stop being mean. They'll stop being mean if we just give them what they want. That's not how they work. That's not how a terrorist state like Iran works. They respond to strength, not weakness. And we're showing nothing but weakness. And now we're wanting Israel to join us in showing weakness. They're the ones in the actual region. They're the ones that are a threat of being attacked. We have to allow Israel to show strength. And, the whole negotiation of, we'll let you go into Rafah if you don't hit back. Hitting back and going into Rafah are two things that need to happen. They're not negotiable. And the United States doesn't have a right to negotiate with Israel on its own military objectives to protect itself. We claim for them to be an ally, but yet we're inhibiting them from protecting themselves and doing the necessary actions to protect themselves. So we'll see. Like I said, Israel is not only facing pressure from the United States not to hit back, but pretty much everybody around the world is not wanting Israel to hit back and fears of starting a regional war. How about you show that? How about you give Iran that message and not Israel? The genie's out of the bottle. Iran has already started or has started the possibility of a regional war breaking out. Israel now has to deter Iran so that they will stop doing this. If nobody else will, Israel's going to have to. So we'll see if Israel does strike back. I do think they will. There's been reports that they're waiting until after Passover. I think that's a possibility. But Passover is the 20th or something. I should double check that. But I believe that's a possibility. So we'll see. I hope they strike back, and I hope they set a deterrence and set a precedent. Because like I said, if the United States is not going to do it, Israel is going to have to do it to protect itself. Next, I wanted to talk about the Mayorkas impeachment trial going on right now. If you don't know, Alejandro Mayorkas is the head of the Department of Homeland Security, and the Republicans started this impeachment trial because of obviously the crisis at the border, but claiming that Mayorkas deliberately ignored things that put the national security at risk in terms of letting terrorists in through the border. Just being incompetent really is the reasoning behind the impeachment. It will not get past the Senate as expected. The Senate is the Democratic majority. They control the Senate, so it's not surprising. But Chuck Schumer said that it's not a good thing to use impeachment to settle policy disputes. I agree. But coming from you, of all people, you and your party led multiple bogus impeachment attempts at Donald Trump when he was in office. So, although I agree with you, it's very hypocritical of the left to say stuff like this. I wasn't for impeachment, bogus impeachment trials when the left did it for Donald Trump. So I'm not for it when the Republican Party does it for people on the left that we don't like. We're playing the same game that the left plays is not a good move for Republicans, I believe, because all we're doing is, making that gap wider. All we're doing is raising the political polarization that is already unprecedented in our nation right now, pretty much since the Civil War, I would argue. So I don't think playing the same game with them, trying to win at their game, is the right way to go about things. I think we are bigger than that as conservatives. I believe that we need to I think we're better than that. I think we're better than that. And like I said, playing that game is not going to accomplish anything. And, I mentioned the gap being between the right and the left being as wide as it's been since the Civil War, really. And, the left is going just more and more to the left. What I mean is the moderate Democrats. There's not many moderate Democrats anymore, and they're dwindling. And especially when you have administration like the Biden administration, which is the most radical presidential administration ever, I would argue, in terms of going to the extreme of their political party. I mean, the Biden administration is so radically left and woke, it's absurd. So they're not helping the situation at all. All they're doing is pushing the left even more towards the left. And his inaugural speech was uniting the nation, claiming that Donald Trump ruined the nation in terms of everybody hating each other from the right and the left, and he was going to be a president of all people, including people that didn't vote for him. And yet from day one of his presidency has done nothing but launch an attack on the MAGA Republicans. So he's not helped this case at all. And if you look at the right, the right is more spread out, and there's a lot more moderate Republicans than there are moderate Democrats. And, the far right of the Republican Party is a lot smaller than the far left of the Democratic Party. So I understand the argument from Republicans that, I don't have to tell you that politics has become a game. And I understand the argument of, if the Republican Party doesn't lean more towards the right and become even more radical, then we're not going to get anything done, and we being the Republican Party. I understand that, but we can't play that game because it's not a good game to play. Politics being a game and there being teams like it has become over the last several years is not good for politics. It's not good for America. There's a reason that George Washington warned us against the forming of political parties. We're seeing it manifest itself right now. There's nothing but drama. It's like the politicians are seeing themselves as, reality TV stars almost. And when you sign to become a politician, you're not running on your own beliefs and your own original ideas. Whether you have an R or a D next to your name, you're just a number pretty much. You're just a number for, whether Republicans will have control over the House or the Senate. You're not running as you yourself and your original ideas. You're running as either a Republican or a Democrat. And, it's crazy that even ballots have an option to bubble in to vote all Republican, vote all Democrat instead of voting on independent, candidates. So, all this to say, the impeachment game that's what it is. Impeachment has become a game. You don't like somebody, then you impeach them because you're mad that they're in power. That's essentially what it is. And me saying that doesn't mean I disagree that Alejandro Mayorkas is a terrible human being, allowing existential crisis at the border. All that stuff is true. Should he be impeached for that? I don't see a, discrete law that he broke that will back up the impeachment claim. I mean, all the stuff that they're arguing, the Republicans, are true, but I don't like that game being played. It gives me a headache. It gave me a headache when the left did it, and I don't like Republicans doing it either, because all it's doing is dividing us even more. Impeachment should be what it used to be, a bipartisan sort of last resort. Somebody did something so awful that they have to go, and you'll get bipartisan support that they have to go, like Watergate, for example. It does not need to be a political weapon, and I say that for both sides of the aisle. Obviously, like I said, the left has become so radicalized that they're going to keep playing the game. I just think the Republican Party needs to be bigger than that and not play the game with them. I don't think the Republican Party doubling down and going even more to the radical right and to the far right will solve any problems. Like I said, the argument that we won't get anything done if that's not the case, I don't really buy that, essentially. But I understand what they're saying. I just think is for the good of our nation, we need to make that gap smaller between the right and the left and stop dividing everybody and, bring down the political polarization from what it is right now. And it's get politics from stop becoming a game. Have politicians see themselves as public servants again. They don't see themselves as that right now. They see themselves as TV stars, essentially. They do it for the fame, I believe is what they're doing it for. And, make politics what it should be again. Make it a public servanthood for the U.S. citizen and not participating in this game and making everything dramatized and impeaching everybody that you don't like. It needs to stop. And this Mayorkas, we're impeaching people with no, all the Republicans knew that this wasn't going to get past the Senate. So what's the point of even doing it in the first place? You're not accomplishing anything except wasting time. And I say that agreeing with everything that they were saying about Alejandro Mayorkas. That's not the point. The point is you're wasting taxpayers' money and you're wasting time that could be spent on actually trying to fix the border when you know that trying to get Mayorkas impeached was failed from the get-go. It was never going to work. So why even do it in the first place? It's exhausting. It's annoying. I wish it would just stop. And I don't want the Republican Party to lean more into the far right, trying to double down and play the game the left is playing. We don't have to do that. We being Republicans, we don't have to play that game. And I hope we don't play that game. And things won't get better unless that game stops. A new Ukrainian aid package will be up for vote soon. It will include $61 billion to Ukraine, and not only Ukraine, but other European countries surrounding Ukraine to protect them from a potential Russian invasion, I guess. I don't know. It's pretty absurd. Zelensky has been mad that we're apparently not treating Ukraine as well as we're treating Israel. First of all, Israel is an ally. You are not, okay? Ukraine's not a part of NATO, and we are just using them as a proxy to fight Russia. You know, if you want a good example as to Ukraine not being a U.S. ally, the CIA staged a coup in Ukraine in 2014 to get a controllable government in charge. Is that something a country would do to its own ally? Would a country stage a coup in its own ally's country because they don't like who's in charge so that they can get people in charge that they can control? No, what does that tell you? That Ukraine's not an ally. Ukraine is an asset. Ukraine is a tool. That's it. You know, an ally can be an asset and a tool, but Ukraine's not an ally. They are simply just an asset and a tool. They're a tool for us because they're right on Russia's border. They're an asset for us because if we can get them to join NATO and use them as a proxy for Russia, we could put missiles right on Russia's border, and there will be a threat right on Russia's border instead of, you know, Ukraine's just kind of the last piece of NATO's dream of being on the border of Russia so that they can have that threat be there. The United States and NATO knew what was going to happen when they started talking about Ukraine joining NATO. They knew Russia was going to invade. They're not stupid. So what was the point of it? They want Ukraine as a proxy to fight Russia. They're not an ally. They're a proxy. And Zelensky, I'm sorry, sir, that $75 billion wasn't enough for you. And the $61 billion that will be going to you soon, because I guarantee you they will get voted. It will get approved. I'm sorry that's all not enough for you, and you know we're treating Israel, who is actually our ally, supposedly better than you, even though we're sending them about half annually than what we send you. So I'm sorry, sir, you can stop being a whiny baby and get off your cocaine, please. I don't know when as a nation we started listening to a coked up failed comedian demanding and pounding fists at us to tell us what to do. You don't get to tell us what to do. You're not our own leader, and we're done bankrupting ourselves for your failed war. Hopefully, I am. I'm done with it. The United States government apparently is not done with it yet. I wrote down several reasons why the Israeli war in Gaza is different from the war in Ukraine. First off, like I said, Israel is actually an ally. Ukraine is not. Israel is fighting opponents that they can beat. Our help is just helping ensure that Ukraine never could have beaten Russia from the beginning. I mean, they put up a good fight and put up more resistance than Russia probably expected. But, you know, the fact of the matter is, without an absurd amount of money from the West to Ukraine, even with that aid and that money, Ukraine can't beat Russia. It's just, anybody who tells you differently is stupid. Russia has so many more people, bigger landmass, more weapons, without counting in the weapons given from the West to Ukraine. So Ukraine was never going to defeat Russia and fight it off from invading. All this was a money grab for the military-industrial complex, and I'll get into that more later. The next example is the amount we're giving Israel is nowhere near the amount we're giving Ukraine. I mentioned that earlier. Israel is not a proxy for us, as in we're not trying to fight, you know, Hezbollah in Lebanon or Iran or any of Israel's enemies in the Middle East. You know, like, Israel's not our ally simply because we're using them as a proxy against another country. You know, Ukraine, that's all they are to us. They're a proxy. So Israel actually being an ally and fighting enemies that they can beat on their own. We're just giving them our help to ensure that, and nowhere near the amount as we're giving Ukraine. Meanwhile, we're bankrupting ourselves over a war that was failed from the get-go. They're fighting they're fighting someone who is blatantly an enemy of us, like Iran. Israel is another example. You could argue that we're in another Cold War with Russia. I would agree with you, but we don't have to be. Iran is not Russia. Russia is promoting the narrative of peace. They want peace in Ukraine. They don't want a world war. It seems like our government officials want a world war. People like Lindsey Graham, the warmongers in D.C., who are always pushing for openly striking countries like Iran and Russia. Like when the 3 soldiers were killed in the Middle East from, not even Iran directly, it was militias in Iraq, I believe it was. It may have been Syria. I believe it was Syria, actually. And he wanted to strike Tehran. So that's absurd. So all that to say, it seems like our government officials want war with Russia, which is World War III, more than Russia wants war with us. Russia isn't chanting death to the U.S. in its Congress sessions like Iran is. So, Israel's up against an actual enemy of us, of Iran, instead of, Ukraine versus Russia. Iran is not Russia. The next example, the war in the Middle East has not bankrupted us because Israel is winning. And we're not sending $75 billion to a losing war effort. Israel is winning the war against Hamas. They can beat Iran. They can beat Hezbollah. Ukraine could never beat Russia. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to tell you Santa Claus is not real, okay? Just look at the facts. Ukraine never stood a chance to defeat Russia. Period. The end. And the only reason this stalemate, we're bankrupting ourselves as a nation, sending Ukraine weapons and money just to keep it a stalemate. Just to keep it a stalemate alone. And I'm not saying Russia can beat the United States, but Russia can beat Ukraine. Look at the facts, people. This was a war that was lost from the beginning. And those examples don't even include the history of the U.S. pushing NATO all the way to Russia's border and how rich the military-industrial complex is getting from the war in Ukraine. The fact that the war in Ukraine didn't need to happen, aka what I'm saying is we caused it to happen. That you can be critical of your own country bankrupting itself over a foreign war that's been lost for a while and has been lost from the beginning for a country that's not an ally, while also realizing that Russia's invasion was illegal and Putin's reasoning behind it is irrational. You're not a Putin sympathizer for wanting your country to thrive economically and wanting peace. Obviously, Ukraine is not Russia like Putin claims it is. Obviously, like the total reasoning of Russia claiming back its own people, obviously that stuff is irrational and it was illegal. It was an illegal invasion, and I don't support the invasion of Ukraine. You can realize that while also realizing that the Ukrainians and the West and NATO primarily has been provoking Russia for years, and this war didn't have to happen. Kamala Harris and others knew what was going to happen when they go in public to the press and say Ukraine will be in NATO. They knew what was going to happen. They knew Russia was going to invade. They wanted that almost. It seems like it. So why are we pushing for Ukraine to be in NATO? Why? What is the need? What is the need? I'll tell you what the need is. They'll have to buy weapons from the U.S. military-industrial complex. That's the reasoning. If you want peace with Russia, you don't want to start a World War III, why is Ukraine... Why does Ukraine need to be in NATO? And the threat of Putin invading all of Europe just doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist. They think you're stupid by saying that. Putin does not want to invade Ukraine or all of Europe. Putin does not want to go on a tirade and just start taking over countries because he knows that would start a world war. And he said many times he doesn't want that to happen. The reason he's invading Ukraine is because we're trying to put our weapons on Russia's border. How would we feel, say Russia started in South America and made its way all the way up, and then the last piece was like Mexico, and they were trying to put their weapons on Mexico? We wouldn't be happy with that. We'd probably respond the same way that Russia's responding. And I'm not saying it's right, but I'm just saying it's true. We would probably do the same thing. So why are we, if we know that's going to happen, why are we trying to get Ukraine in NATO? They knew Russia was going to invade. They knew that. And they know that Putin doesn't want to invade all of Europe. They know that. They're trying to scare you and trying to get your approval for a war against Russia, essentially. And that's what this has become, a proxy war against Russia via Ukraine. So all that to say, Sir Zelensky, the reason you're not getting coddled like Israel, even though you're getting tons more money than we're giving Israel. Israel's an ally. You're not. Israel's fighting a country they can beat. You're not. I'm sorry to break it to you. And we're not bankrupting ourselves over the war in Gaza. We are bankrupting ourselves for you. And I'm sorry that $75 billion is not enough for your cocaine use. Sorry we're not supplying your vice well enough. We need to realize how absurd this is as a nation, that we have a foreign leader like Zelensky who is demanding we give him more money. We've given him $75 billion. Ukraine is not a couple more billion away, a couple more fighter jets away from winning the war against Russia. They were never going to win in the first place. So it's time for us to come to peace terms with Russia, put an end to this killing of a whole generation of men in Ukraine. And, Putin's even said that he doesn't want all of Ukraine. He's good where the parts of Ukraine that the line's at right now is, I'm not appeasing Putin by saying this, or I'm not validifying validating is the words. Validating what Putin is saying or the invasion into Ukraine by saying this, but the truth is, the provinces in Ukraine that he's currently holding right now, they see themselves as Russian, they speak Russian, they have Russian culture, and they don't even have representation in Ukraine, in the Ukrainian government. So he said he's fine with being where he's at and calling it a day. He will also, I guarantee you, ensure that Ukraine doesn't become a part of NATO, which is about 0% chance that happens. And there's no peace in sight, really, I hate to say, because of the West. But like I said, Ukraine is not on the fringe of winning, and they desperately need the aid so we can win. Stop it, okay? Let's put an end to the nonsense. Santa Claus is not real. Russia has won the war, and it's time to come to peace terms instead of bankrupting ourselves and threatening a World War III. Stop fighting a global superpower via proxy immaturely. Grow up. Put an end to the war. So, sir, Zelensky, that is why. That is why you're not getting coddled like Israel. You're not getting treated like Israel because Israel is an ally. Period. The end. You're not. And you will never be if you never join NATO. And even if you do join NATO, all you are to the United States is a tool, a puppet, and an asset. That's all you are. So you can shut up, get off cocaine, and get sober, please. And stop demanding more money from the U.S. taxpayer. It's embarrassing, it's insulting, and it's ridiculous. All right, that is all the topics for today. I will be back on Monday, probably, with another episode.